diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, it would certainly seem the second secretary would have diplomatic immunity. Whether the state airline employee has or hasn't is not clear, and whether either of them are still in the country. It is assumed they are still in Malaysia, but it's not clear their whereabouts at all.
Rupert Wingfield-Hayes covering that for us, and let's pick up on what he said about the relationship between Malaysia and North Korea. Unusually, Malaysians don't need a visa for North Korea and vice versa, and that's the only country that has visa-free travel with North Korea. Presumably that might be about to change. But why have there been such close relations? John Nilsson-Wright is a senior fellow at Cambridge University.
North Korea is a country which, as we all know, has a pretty parlous economic situation. It is historically heavily dependent on China for food and energy. And the North Korean state has consistently been looking to partners elsewhere. Southeast Asia has been quite attractive to it in the sense that ASEAN itself, as part of the, if you like, the non-aligned movement, as a regional organization that respects the importance of state sovereignty, its member countries might be thought as being sympathetic to the North Korean emphasis on its independence and its autonomy. In the case of Malaysia, the trade between the two countries is pretty modest. It's about $5 million in 2015. Malaysia is one of the few countries, the only country, I think, that provides visa-free travel for its citizens to North Korea. The North Koreans are keen to develop tourism as a means of boosting their access to foreign currency. The Malaysians export oil, rubber, palm oil to North Korea. The North Koreans, in return, have provided iron and steel. They've also provided human capital. There are some 300 North Koreans working in the coal mining industry, for example, in Malaysia. So there is a type of complementary economic relationship between the two countries.
Right, and I guess when North Korea is so isolated by so many other countries, it needs some allies.
Absolutely. It needs all the allies it can get, really, to be perfectly honest. And therefore, it's an interesting question. Why would North Korea have risked its relationship with Malaysia through the apparent assassination of Kim Jong-Nam? I suspect it tells us something about Kim Jong-un's desire to get rid of his troublesome half-brother, concern on the part of the North Koreans that they've seen a number of high-profile defections in recent months. Last autumn, of course, famously, the deputy ambassador in the North Korean embassy in London defected, showing up in South Korea and criticizing the regime. This assassination may have been a signal, if you like, to other North Korean officials who might have been minded to defect. But it's a risk. I mean, it means that I think the relationship bilaterally between KL and Pyongyang will now be in serious jeopardy.
Is that right? You think that sort of visa-free travel, that those days might be over?
Possibly. I mean, the Malaysians will want to send a clear signal. There are other cultural exchanges between the two countries. There are significant numbers of North Korean students in Malaysia. North Korea has set up a chain of restaurants in Malaysia. Whether those will be seriously impacted by this development is hard to say. I mean, more broadly, when you look at North Korea's relations with Southeast Asia, there are many countries that it's had ties with Indonesia, with Myanmar. Vietnam, as a communist state, of course, has been seen by some as a potential example to North Korea of how you can combine economic reform with political authoritarianism. We will see, I think, the North Koreans want to maintain those links within the region. And also regional negotiations, the regional political framework. The ASEAN Regional Forum has been a body that the North Koreans have been associated with. Often on the margins of that organization, the North Koreans have negotiated with Americans and also with South Koreans. So the Southeast Asia nexus with North Korea is important for lots of reasons, not just economic.
And from Cambridge University, that's John Nilsson-Wright. The Trump administration has released new guidelines aimed at widening the net and speeding up the process to remove illegal immigrants living in the United States. Undocumented immigrants with a criminal record will be targeted first, along with those deemed a risk to U.S. security or who have abused the benefit system. But young children brought into the U.S. illegally will be allowed to remain. Even before the new guidelines from the Department of Homeland Security, officials had been arresting people who they say have criminal records and are not citizens of the United States. According to immigration officials, last week's arrests targeted mostly convicted criminals who are nationals of other countries. Yet these enforcement operations have raised anxiety levels in immigrant neighbourhoods. Deepa Fernandez reports from Los Angeles.